Did you enjoy your holiday, Martha?
I did. I did. It was very relaxing. Missed the two of you, obviously.
Well, you missed a lot of news as well.
Yeah. What did I? Not much. Couple of
Ah,
trade wars. Couple of new trade wars. Threat
nothing
of a
much.
new world war. Nothing much.
Yeah, just end of the world as we know it. Busy, Mark, isn't it?
It has been very, very busy. But
Well, I'm
we
glad to be
missed
back.
you. We've been mentioning your holiday lots while you've been on holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've had more interest in my holiday than I've ever had on in any journalism I've done.
I'm James Matthews,
I'm Martha Kelner.
And I'm Mark Stone.
and this is day 51 of Trump 100. The wolf is biting on Wall Street. Trump, tariffs, and where it all ends is the question spooking the stock market.
And there's a new Canadian Prime Minister in town, Mark Carney. I'm in Canada to find out how he plans to deal with his neighbour, the United States.
Plus, an iconic Black Lives Matter street painting, a block from the White House, is removed after pressure from the president. Well, I've spent all day at the White House today, and it was a curiously unusual day because we didn't see Donald Trump. No news conference, no impromptu moment with the media. And I wonder why that was. I think maybe it was because of what was going on Wall Street. The US stock markets had their worst day so far this year. All three major stock indexes slumped on Monday. And the numbers are really not good. I mean, it's what time is it now? So 7:45 in the evening. And in summary, the Nasdaq got absolutely hammered, dropping a huge 4%. That's one of the worst single day losses ever. The S&P 500 wasn't far off, slipping 2.7%, and the Dow fell over 700 points, 2.1%. A lot of numbers there. Basically, it's bad. And to make things worse, Trump has refused to rule out a recession. Have a listen to this on Fox News on Sunday.
Are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time. It takes a little time.
A lot of economists had warned that this might happen, that in fact, Donald Trump's obsession with tariffs was ill advised. 25% tariffs here in Canada, also down in Mexico, 10% tariffs on China. But he's been flip flopping on them on and off, paused, not paused. I think it's changed at least twice in the last 10 days. And this is all pretty scary news for voters, and particularly the voters that were motivated by the economy, who thought that Donald Trump was going to be the answer to their problems at the petrol pumps and in the supermarkets. And in fact, they're now being faced with the exact opposite.
And I think that's Trump's difficulty. There is an incoherence and an unfocused, certainly a changing approach to tariffs, right down to the reason for them. You know, it's a trade tool 1 minute, it's a punitive instrument the next. The word of the day here, actually, in coverage has been stagflation, stalled growth, persistent inflation, and increased employment. It's the term that haunted the Carter presidency. And, you know, we are in early days, but whatever the chances of that coming back to haunt Trump, it's certainly the chat.
Yeah, I think one thing that's worth pointing out is that I think the American public are quite a lot more plugged into what the stock market does than we are in the UK. I mean, they pensions are generally more closely attached to the stock market. So slumps in stocks in America have potentially a much more real impact on average people than in the UK. It's not as if, oh, this is just rich people who deal with the stocks and shares that are going to get whacked. Potentially, it's everyone, and so that is, I think, why Donald Trump is potentially pretty worried. He loves the stock market when it's doing well. Interesting, we haven't seen him today, and who knows what might happen tomorrow. I mean, tariffs at the moment off with Canada, and Mexico, but maybe back on again. Who knows?
Yeah, and we're seeing threats from officials in Canada. The Premier of Ontario is saying he's going to increase exports of electricity prices to the three neighbouring US states, so New York State, Minnesota, and Michigan, by 25%. He's threatened if the tariff situation deteriorates, if it gets worse, he says he may cut off the electricity supply to those 3 states from Canada entirely. So, real fears that people are living with in some of these US states, some of which, Michigan, have been key to Donald Trump getting elected at all.
Yeah, and if you look further afield, China now has imposed tariffs on agricultural products from the United States. China being the largest market overseas for farmers and agricultural producers. And remember what happened the last time. Soybeans are involved once again. Last time round in Trump's first term, there were tariffs on soybeans. China went to Brazil and started importing soybeans from there. That harmed farmers in the United States to the extent that the government ended up having to pay billions in compensation to them. So I think we're seeing a creep in the consequences of tariffs, and it is rather creeping up on Donald Trump in a way that he won't like. Now, Martha, you're in Canada with big news from our friends in the north because its ruling Liberal Party has chosen Mark Carney, a man we know quite well in the UK, to succeed Justin Trudeau as the country's prime minister. Yeah.
He is a money man. He ran the Bank of Canada from 2008 to 2013. People in the UK will know him best for running the Bank of England, though, which he did from 2013 to 2020. So he has good credentials. Those are two of the world's largest banks. And he navigated those two countries through tricky times, seeing Canada through the financial crisis and then blunting the impact of Brexit. So it's earned him something of a reputation as a fixer, and he is much more popular than the outgoing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. They think he's the man for the job right now.
Yeah, he did a master's degree in economics, Martha, in the
Mhm.
UK. Do you know which university?
I'm going to guess Oxford University. It's,
And
it's
what
either
was his
Oxford or
sport?
Cambridge.
What it was
Oh God!
Oxford.
Now you're testing me. I don't
What was
know
his
that.
sport? It's written down
Uh,
here.
okay. Oh, ice hockey.
Yeah, he's been
Yeah.
doing all the fighting talk, hasn't he? I'm not sure if he was a brawler on the ice, but in his acceptance speech with Trump in mind, he said, "We didn't ask for this fight, but Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves." Fighting
Wow.
talk indeed.
Yeah, I guess the question is how will he handle Donald Trump?
Yeah.
Is a fixer and a money man. That's what he seems to be. Is that what Canada needs right now? It'll be interesting to see how this new relationship goes.
Yeah, he is different, and he's a money man, as Martha said, and a
That's got to be
formidable.
useful, I guess.
Trump will see him as a
Mhm.
formidable opponent, not the Justin Trudeau who, bless him, was in tears at his final speech and all the rest of it. Clearly, Trump thought he was an individual who he could bully. Carney with the ice hockey talk, he's a Canadian. He's the moose that roared, and he needs to be because Trump has stirred this patriotism in Canadians. That's why Carney's Liberal Party have surged in the polls. He allows for a reset in Canadian-US relations.
Incidentally, our friend and colleague Ed Conway knows Mark Carney very well. Interviewed him lots of times when Carney was governor of the Bank of England. So have a listen to the Sky News Daily, where Ed goes into a lot of detail about how he thinks Carney will fare.
Martha, we know you've just landed in Canada, but what are you going to be looking into when you're there?
Yeah, I'm in Vancouver in British Columbia, James, landed this morning. And I think, in short, looking at just how the relationship between the US and its closest geographical ally has deteriorated so rapidly, how much
Yeah.
it's changed in the past 50 days. In the matter of several weeks, they've gone from being an ally to being an enemy, really. We can see that, through the booing of the US national anthem, the coffee shops that are selling Canadianos now and not Americanos.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, light-hearted, but there is a serious issue here. And I guess looking at just why is the US, why is Donald Trump suddenly picking a fight with Canada? They now seem to have settled on a talking point of a reason for this trade war being fentanyl.
Mhm.
That is the drug which I know we've all seen separately in our own reporting, how it has devastated communities in the United States, from Philadelphia to San Francisco to Portland. It is a tragedy of epic proportions in the US, but it's also a tragedy of epic proportions in Canada as well. I was just driving around very briefly the east side of Vancouver's downtown, and it is very similar to what I've seen in San Francisco. You know, streets upon streets of people with their trousers round their ankles,
Yeah.
injecting, this open air drug market.
Mm.
But it's the fentanyl crisis that the US are now saying is the reason for starting this trade war. They're saying that drugs are flooding through the northern border. It just does not stand up to scrutiny. US Customs and Border Control says that just 1% of all fentanyl in the US is being smuggled over the Canadian border. 43 pounds of fentanyl a year compared to a total of more than 21,000 pounds. So effectively, we have fentanyl that would fit in a single suitcase, causing a trade
Yeah.
war which could have global implications.
Very interesting, Martha. More on that from you later in the week. In the meantime, Mark, you've been covering a story today in Washington, D.C., in a place by the name of Black Lives Matter Plaza.
Yeah, and it's a story I knew was happening, James, because I could hear it. I could hear
Yeah.
the heavy diggers moving into a street that is a couple of blocks north of the White House itself, where I was. Black Lives Matter Plaza is what that particular street, 2 blocks from the White House, has become known as for the past 4 years. Not least because on the street there is the words "Black Lives Matter" have been painted. Initially, it was a kind of impromptu sort of street mural, if you like. But it became more permanent that the Democratic mayor of Washington, D.C., about a year or so after the temporary painting was put there, she made it permanent. She had it formally, the words formally written on the road itself. It looks incredible, especially from the sky. But it's gone today, or it's going anyway.
Yeah, I remember it, Mark, on election night when Biden won in 2020. I remember I was in the White House, and I remember the sound coming from that street. And I remember saying, that sounds like revolution. And it was a football crowd, just a huge roar, continuous roar through the night and for several days. And you were there today, Mark. I mean, clearly that's a memory and a sentiment that is literally being washed away.
Yeah, so Muriel Bowser is the mayor of DC. She has clashed with Donald Trump an awful lot, clashed with him during his last presidency, and is clashing with him again, and has clearly made a decision that this is a fight not worth fighting. The Republicans and Donald Trump effectively said to her, as the sort of municipal leader of the city, if you don't remove the painting on the road, then we will block your funding. And so she kind of rolled over and said, look, this isn't a fight worth fighting. And I went down there today and I saw a woman standing looking kind of bemused, watching this happening, a black woman. And I said to her, how are you feeling?
If anybody thinks that racism does not exist or people are not concerned about, Black folks, I think you see exactly an example of it right here. But on a personal level, why? What is it hurting, to reflect what it really, really meant when we put it down a few years ago?
And what did it mean to you?
So it meant that, yeah, of course, all people matter. We know that. But at the time, when atrocities like the George Floyd situation was acutely displayed all over the country, probably all over the world, right? This was a message. This was sending a message, that we love you. So it was an act of love, right? And so I think taking it down is the opposite, an act of hate.
Mark, you were at the White House today. So was Elon Musk being interviewed live on TV. What did you make of it?
I thought he seemed kind of out of character. I thought he looked subdued, tired, exhausted, kind of like he'd given up a bit. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I agree. I thought he looked very weary, a reluctant interviewee, certainly. And I have to say, I watched it. He was actually asked by the interviewer, will you go another year? His reply was, yeah, I think so. So, that's what he said, but I've never seen him looking less enthusiastic about anything. Yeah, he's a money man, Musk. He's watching stock in Tesla tanking. So is his popularity. And I do wonder, politics is a dirty game. The kind of criticism and hatred you get in politics is visceral, like he will never have had before. And I wonder, does there come a point when politics for him just becomes too uncomfortable?
Yeah, maybe he is just worried about the Tesla shares because they fell 15% today. I mean, they've almost halved in value since their recent peak in
It's the
mid-December.
bottom line, isn't it?
It is.
Bitcoin also tanking in value. So,
Or
yeah.
maybe he just had a heavy weekend. We do know that he was down in Mar-a-Lago with Donald Trump and, in fact, with the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. The three of them down there, perhaps a kind of bonding session. Maybe they needed that after last week.
Yeah, bonding. Speaking of which, Mark, you overheard a conversation in the White House. Tell us about that.
But there was so little going on in the White House today, I didn't quite know what to do with myself because every day of the past 50, it's been crazy. Except for today, it was very quiet. And then I heard a conversation on the two journalists next door to me, both American. I tuned in as they were saying, one of them said to the other, I think we should all hate the British.
Why should we escape?
We give them an easy ride with their colonial history. They come in and they're all like tally-ho, tea and biscuits. We always fall for their accent. I mean, no, so said this American.
Well,
I don't think
we don't say tally-ho, tea and biscuits in Wakefield.
Yeah,
So I think they must be talking about different British people.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Journalistic accuracy. Had he said, rather than tea and biscuits, had he mentioned lager and kebabs, then I would have.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it for today. Before we go, a reminder to send us your questions for this weekend's Q&A episode.
You can email us on trump100@sky.uk. And if you don't already, please do follow Trump 100 wherever you're listening.
Thanks for joining us for day 51 of Trump 100. See you tomorrow for day 52.
Bye for now.